Good morning, everyone. Welcome to After Further Review with Mark Ferrer and John Pelkey. Sans John Pelkey at the moment. We are having technical difficulties, and he's nowhere to be found. He's AWOL right now. Look, now he's joining us. Is he back? He is not back, but his picture is there, folks. If you're keeping track, listening to the podcast, you briefly saw John Pelkey. But we are joined today, a very, very special guest on the program for After Further Review, Michael Crawford. He's the chairman, the president, the CEO, sort of everything big at the Hall of Fame Resort and Entertainment Company. And this is a company that owns, I believe, the Hall of Fame Village, powered by Johnson Controls. And it also is an entertainment company, gaming company, involved in all kinds of wonderful projects with the Hall of Fame Village and with this Hall of Fame resort as well. Please let's welcome to After Further Review, Michael Crawford. Thanks for joining us, sir. We asked this a little bit beforehand. How are you holding up in this crazy year where you're opening all of these facilities and getting this huge company off the ground, and then it's also COVID, oh, by the way?
It's a little difficult, of course. I think everybody is facing the same thing, but we're powering through. I think we've had a good year with signing some new partnerships. We've certainly broken ground on the village, which we're excited about. We opened a new hotel asset in downtown Canton. A lot of people thought, wow, you're doing that in the middle of COVID, but it's an interesting business model we have. It's very synergistic. So as we have programming, at the village, we have them stay at our hotel downtown. And of course, we've expanded our business. We took it public in July. Originally, we had a vision of creating this wonderful destination in Canton, Ohio, but was offered an opportunity to go public. And we did that. And as we did that, we thought, well, we have access to some pretty neat brands with the Hall of Fame and the NFL Alumni Association, some unique intellectual property. So why not diversify and focus on where, guests and fans are spending their time and their money? And we've sort of broken the company into three different business units, themed destination-based assets, of course, like we're creating here, and maybe even one day offsite as well. Gaming, we announced the launch of our Hall of Fantasy Football League, which I'm really excited about, and we'll be doing that in 2021. And then, of course, media. And we signed a big media deal with Sports Illustrated around our NFL Alumni Academy. So lots of progress. But a challenge, of course, and we've sort of been battling uphill most of this year, but the team has done a great job.
Well, and you come from a background that has had its share of challenges as well. As you were right there opening Shanghai Disney as a member of the Walt Disney Company, and so you are steeped in the knowledge and the challenges therein of doing massive projects that seemed probably virtually impossible at the time. And you've got to be the guy to kind of cheer on the troops at all. Did that experience in Shanghai help inform any of this, Michael?
Yeah, I think all the experiences you have, they put more tools in your toolkit, right? And it just teaches you what to look for and how to think about things. And these kinds of destinations are marathons. They're not sprints. And so you have to pace and you have to appreciate and recognize the wins when you get them, putting it in football parlance. And you also have to take and have the vision and the look ahead. And so it's a balance. I think Shanghai was, an interesting and very difficult opportunity for me from a career perspective. But, it was very rewarding. And I think this one will be equally so, if not more so, believe it or not, coming from Ohio, and having the opportunity to have an impact on a community and a region and a state that is I'm particularly fond of and near and dear to my heart.
I think that's a wonderful thing. Let's talk about that a bit. I mean, this must really be a special part of your career. Coming back home, combining hometown and the NFL and getting to put this very wonderful thing together. You went to Bowling Green as well. What's it like personally for you to be back home doing this?
It's very different. I will say that. I've spent a great deal of time in my career internationally, but it's been special. Rarely do you get an opportunity to take the skills that you've learned working for high-profile companies like the Walt Disney Company or Four Seasons Hotel and Resorts and apply them in a way that, is as I said, very special, in a place that you grew up, sort of cheering for Buckeyes and Browns and Indians and others. I've always been a hometown fan. So I joke a little bit about, it's unique having the opportunity, but there's, believe it or not, even more pressure when your family's calling you on a regular basis saying, hey, is this done yet? When can we come? What's going on? So it's been very different. But I will say this, the team that we've been able to put together also has those connections to Ohio. So it's just more meaningful when you get to do it, in a place where you can have an impact, and it's an opportunity to do that here. And so we're thankful. We're very thankful.
Now, you speak of meaningful moments, and you have a lot of those involved in your programming there. And you mentioned earlier the NFL Alumni Academy. You call it the Academy. Kind of banking off a little bit about some things that are done down here at the sports complex and working with coaches, but it's sort of that expanded. Coaches, players, former players, NFL alumni folks working with athletes in this academy. You've already had one already with Jay Hayes, with Dean Dalton, who's the head of this thing. Talk about this. This is a very unique and special and a wonderful opportunity, I think, for up and coming athletes to really hone their skills with folks that have been in the belly of the beast.
It really is, and thanks for asking about that. I think, for me, when I was pitched this opportunity from the Alumni Association, it took me all of about 3 seconds to say, absolutely, that needs to live in Canton, Ohio. And, the birthplace of professional football. And we have a tagline, honor the past and inspire the future, that we use for our company. When you look at how many kids get to go to the NFL on an annual basis, through the draft or through free agency, it's not many. The talent that's out there at the college level, if you just had a few more practices, if you just had some conditioning, and you had it with people who have been there, done that, Dean Dalton, like Mike Tice, like Chip Smith. I mean, these are world-class guys, number one, but have been in the NFL, know what to look for, know how to coach and position these kids. So bringing them here not only fit the mold of what we like to do, which is help develop athletes on and off the field, it helped, from our business model perspective. We, as I talked about earlier, we're very synergistic. So we've had them here from September. Save for COVID, we could have been running live events, sort of those pro day events where fans could have come out and watched. So we could have sold tickets and we could have had concessions. They're staying at our hotel. And then lo and behold, this becomes what I think will be even better than the next Hard Knocks or Last Chance U, the stories of these athletes, the coaches, and getting into the NFL. And we've sent over a dozen players just this year to NFL teams. And we only brought in 3 player positions, offensive and defensive linemen and running backs. And yet Sports Illustrated came forward and said, wow, this is going to be impactful. People are going to want to really watch and see what this is. So, as a company, we have a chance to kind of inspire those kids, give them the development, but at the same time, realize the business model and the strategy we put forward.
There's no doubt about it. They can even be guests on your HOFL show as well, correct?
Absolutely.
Since they're in town, they can be part of that as you're doing trivia online and on the app, and we'll get into the details of that. But that's a fun way to use those resources as well. And also, you've got this national youth football sports complex there, where I'm sure you're going to bring in lots of youth leagues and such, AYF and UYFL. In other words, these kids are going to be, from their very formative years, are going to be steeped in the Hall of Fame traditions and in this village and in this opportunity to kind of matriculate all the way through to possibly the academy. And who knows? It's highly synergistic and generational, it looks like.
Yeah, that's well put. I think, it's a unique opportunity to have an impact on kids' lives from the time they start playing a sport. And as I said, providing world-class facilities for them to come and play at is one thing, but enlisting Hall of Famers or NFL alumni or coaches to come back and really impart words of wisdom through clinics and academies teamwork, communication, overcoming adversity, really building the character of the athlete. I really gravitated towards that, and the team just finds that a key core part of our mission. We had over 200,000 kids here last year playing in tournaments and championships, and not only football, but lacrosse and soccer and rugby. And these Hall of Famers and their messages sort of transcend sport. It's about overcoming adversity and the stories that they tell and how they, the work ethic that they apply to their craft. So it's exciting to have that chance. And as you say, grow those kids through the multiple different generations that they will be, and then become fans of everything we do and bring their kids back to the Hall of Fame and other experiences we create here on site.
Well, it's this multimedia company. We're gonna get right into the trivia stuff right now, which I love, in the fantasy league, the HOFL fantasy league that you have all year long, and how that's a great interactive tool to keep everyone engaged with, how fun football is, to have them be engaged with testing their knowledge, which everyone loves. Every sports fan loves to talk trivia. Fantasy leagues, obviously, the world is overcome with fantasy fever. And then, of course, your brand is front and center that whole time. But what about this idea? You mentioned the Hard Knocks thing. I mean, are there plans? And I don't want you to talk out of school, but it would be fun to have, some sort of video documentation development, and possibly even a show. And maybe you can even start, when they're young, and just if it's a long enough running show, you can use that B-roll from back in the day. But are there plans to perhaps really bring this into everyone's living room to see how it's like for these kids who might be on the fringes, if you will, and have these opportunities that not many others have?
There are. And in fact, the deal that we signed with Sports Illustrated is exactly that. They recognized, as did we, this chance to help tell the stories of these young men, and, the special characters that they have, but they also the desire to become an NFL player, that really unique experience that not very many have in their lifetime. And so we've been filming, we've been capturing all of this, and of course, in hopes that we go out and sell this show in the very near term in partnership with Sports Illustrated to a distribution channel. And that's a big part of the mission for our media company, is really thinking through how to leverage live sports, live events, and we have a lot of those plans already on the books, and then building partnerships with content development and distribution. So there's never been a shortage of demand for sport content or football content like there is today. And all of these distribution channels, be it online streaming or social media or over-the-top channels run by CBS or NBC Sports, all of those really looking for high caliber and high quality programming. And I think we have, just the programming that they'll need.
There's no doubt about that. That content is Hall of Fame worthy, should I say. It really is. That's the kind of stuff that is gold, and I think will land right off the bat. Everyone loves those kinds of stories and loves to follow those kinds of human interest stories as well. You have you have partnered with HQ with the trivia app in this Hall of Fame Fantasy League, HOFL, and I think every Thursday night, you before the games, you have had trivia. At least those were the plans. You've had trivia before the games. The fantasy contests is every week, I believe, with two players that people have to choose, one or the other. And if whoever's choose the best throughout the season wins a nice cash prize. But this interactive video app, kind of high tech way for fans to engage with the Hall of Fame resort and entertainment company, with what you've just said about video content, it seems to me that already there's some natural ways you guys have been able to navigate COVID pretty well, and continue to do what you need to do and continue to engage the folks you want to engage with.
Absolutely. We realized a long time ago that fans spend time doing multiple things as it relates to the sport of football and sport in general. They love gaming. So Madden football, one of the most popular games out there and has been for, decades. They love sports betting. So, that enhances the way in which they view the game and the excitement. And fantasy is certainly one of those things where for again, decades, people have been playing fantasy. Our league will be very different and unique. There's no league today that has franchise teams that you can actually take a stake in. And so as we just signed a partnership with Stake Kings last week and announced that, it actually allows the fans and the participants to put a stake in the ground, backing a franchise team. We haven't announced those teams yet. We're going to do that in the new year, but we'll have 10 different cities, much like the NFL model, that will have teams that are representative of those cities. They'll have brands, they'll have logos, and people will be able to come together as communities and cheer for those teams, maybe bet on those teams. There's some gamification. And when we were offered the opportunity, which with HQ Trivia, what a way to reach out and sort of activate and get people familiar with getting ready to do. And we've had Hall of Famers on there, very excited about what we're doing and reading questions, some of the trivia questions. And so we're building communities, and from my perspective and from many companies, I guess, this saying content is king really is the case. And so we've been acquiring partnerships and developing content during COVID that we can then take full advantage of and sort of cross-pollinate throughout the different business units of the company. And HQ Trivia is just an example of that.
Perfect. It's absolutely perfect. You're right. The very marketing of your company is the content in a lot of ways. And it's, the way of the future. There's no doubt. All right. Before we wrap up, want to ask you about your alma mater for your master's program. And your daughter's alma mater, just graduated in May, is the University of Notre Dame. And we talked a little bit before, and obviously this last Saturday was a big game. And you mentioned not so much after halftime, but talk about your daughter and her experience in Notre Dame, your experience in Notre Dame, and what you see their future is come the college football playoff when they meet Alabama.
Yeah, well, listen, I've always viewed that place as a very special university. I think many think of it that way. My time there, I've built friendships and connections that you don't lose. And it's a community at Notre Dame. My daughter had some options for university. I think she was brainwashed from the time she was about going to games. And she chose there, and she had an absolutely wonderful time. Just like many other graduating seniors, she had the tail end of her experience got a little bit delayed and set aside with graduation, but we did it virtually, and I thought the university did a great job. I don't think their game Saturday was representative of that team. When they first played Clemson, what was really apparent to me was they controlled the line of scrimmage, and they have deepened, and I give Coach Kelly a lot of credit. They've really gone out and deepened the talent in the trenches, which enables a very powerful running game. And Ian Book is a fantastic quarterback. He's just one of these kids that goes out and wins, and he doesn't have the flash or the flair of Trevor or, last year Joe, but he does a great job. And I think they bounce back really well. They are not under talented. They weren't outmanned. You got to remember, you're talking about college kids, right? And sometimes that momentum comes over you like a tidal wave, and it's hard to get around it. But I'm sure Coach Kelly and the team and the rest of the coaches will be prepared. Alabama's a tough order. That's not an insignificant game. I think they're going to go out and play well. And, you wouldn't expect me to say anything less. I think if they play their game and they play a rushing game and sort of passing in the way that they should and take some shots downfield, they'll have a chance. And, for me and my daughter, that'll be a pretty special experience. We were at the Cotton Bowl a few years ago when they didn't perform so well against Clemson as well. So,
right. All right.
To forget.
Well, we really appreciate you coming on after further review. Thank you for joining us. We wish you and your company and all of the folks working there the best of luck. And as you continue to matriculate through this, it's been a pleasure having you. Thank you, Michael. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me. Happy holidays to everybody, and stay safe. Look forward to seeing you in the new year.
You too. Bye-bye. Michael Crawford. Okay. All right. CEO, chairman of the board, the whole thing. Hall of Fame Resort and Entertainment Company. It's a behemoth, Jeff. It's a behemoth.
I'm not that aware of it. This was interesting for me to hear.
And it's not just with the gaming and some of the partnerships, for instance, in the media with Sports Illustrated, but this alumni academy. We attempted to have Jay Hayes on at one point talking about that, and I don't know if we're back with John. I see his picture. If you're joining us live, you will see his face, and we'll see if we can hear him shortly. He's shaking his head. He's shaking his head.
This show is going to be significantly less good with Jeff Taylor having to fill the very large shoes of the head coach of the Toronto Raptors, John.
Exactly. Head coach and owner of the Toronto Raptors. And had the first game the other night, Friday, the last preseason game that was going to be in Tampa. And they opened their season at home on Wednesday. So that should be very exciting. We can regale in the stories of John Pelkey at Amalie Arena in the future. We can't do it today, however. But yeah, this Hall of Fame thing is unbelievable. This alumni academy is great as well.
I heard him. I heard
something.
Hello.
The listeners are so happy.
Timing.
It's it's been a rough few days. Still licking my wounds.
Oh, well, we were going to say you were going to regale us with stories from Amalie Arena. And,
I was horrible. I was just horrible.
Okay. So let me, without getting into too many details, let me share with our audience some of the comments that John had told me the day after. Because, of course, I was very interested to see how he was doing or how he did.
Poorly.
And he was sort of laughing. It was like, okay, it's the first time. Everyone in the arena, we're having some issues. It was, everyone's kind of getting their stuff together right away. We're kind of looking at each other, throwing our hands up. And he said to me this quote. He said, "Mark, you know me. And if I say one word wrong, if I get the name of someone, if I say, Jeffrey as opposed to Jeff, the rest of the game, he will be beating himself up." He says, "You know me." And he says, "But this one was, I missed a few things here and there, but this one, it was like everyone was sort of there." And I sort of laughed and I've moved on. But evidently since Saturday, since we talked, you have gone further and further into a hole of self-despair. Have I gotten that right?
Yeah, that's absolutely correct. I
don't mean to laugh at your despair, John.
I've reverted to type, and I'm absolutely. It was. I was embarrassed.
See, again.
I'm just. I'm frightened to go back.
I had two friends there, and they said that the PA guy was phenomenal.
Yeah. Well, except the point when I called Kyle Lowry with the 3-pointer and he actually put up an air ball. But to my everlasting credit, from where I was sitting, it looked awfully good. And then it also went out of bounds and they inbounded it quickly. And I wasn't necessarily watching because the problem we had is we did not get the rosters for the teams until midway through the second quarter. So I was doing the Heat roster off of my phone. And I had a torn out page from a Raptor public relations guide or something with Mark, and the font. It's like -30.
Yes.
And anyway, so
I made triple magnifying glasses.
I just made I made a couple of really just rookie errors because it threw me. It just threw me because I was it was like, oh, we'll get you the rosters ahead of time. And no one is to blame because again, there were a lot of problems there. And the thing that you run into, and Mark will tell you this is having done a lot of PA, you take that ownership on yourself. I'm going to go get pronunciations. I'm going to go do this.
Sure. You don't wait on people.
We're so limited as to where we can go. And there are Jeff, you've been at the table. There's generally, 24 people on the long side table. And now there's like 7. because it's just so limited. So you don't have anybody that you can go to. Thank God that some of the press guys helped me with make sure pronunciations were correct. At the end of the first quarter, they actually brought me the stat sheet, which they don't give to the PA generally. You might get one, but you're not the top of the list of that. Thankfully, they did, because it actually had not just the starters. Now, I should say, the poor guy doing the book, and for people who don't know, there's a guy who keeps official statistics. He did the same thing. He didn't have names of guys and he was just putting numbers down and keeping their statistics. So, it's a little bit of a work in progress. But I blame myself for all of it.
Right, of course you do.
Clearly, had it been anyone else,
sure,
they would have done a phenomenal job. I assume that there are meetings that are going on right now to replace me, and if I had a vote, I'd replace me. So there you go.
Let me say this: it is a venue that is not oft used for basketball. Mm-hmm. So that whole setup, it was
some challenges.
First time preseason game this season. I feel like you probably are on the list of things that they're worried about. You're probably on page 796. So you can beat yourself up all you want, but if you think they're actually having a meeting about the PA guy, you have lost your.
Good point. I'm overemphasizing my importance, I think, is really what it comes down to.
Not only that, but they have a lot to worry about bringing a team to a venue in a city where they don't belong, in a place that is all hockey all the time. The Magic play a preseason game there every once in a blue moon. It's not an NBA venue, and the NBA is a finely oiled machine. So I'm certain that the lack of oil on a lot of things, they're definitely meeting on.
And also remember that because of everything, there aren't as many NBA people there either. It's a skeleton, as much of a skeleton crew for things as they can possibly do. Much fewer press people and everything. It was a preseason game as well. I'm not quite Bruce Dern and coming home yet. I'm on the deck of the beach house. I haven't stepped onto the sand yet.
You're not on the sand. Okay.
I'm on the deck of the beach house.
You're still fully clothed.
Right. I'm fully clothed on the deck of the beach house, and somewhere, the Stones are playing in the background. But there were challenges, and I felt really, really bad about it, as you could probably, Mark knows me. I lose my shooter's mentality.
And everyone is saying, Jeff has heard from friends. Lenny saw highlights. Steve saw highlights. They all say you're great. Joe says, yes, you beat your harshest critic. All those are true. But this is what's most impressive to me is you just talked about this skeleton crew. There's not even all the NBA people there. There's like 7 people in the building, and somehow Jeff knows 2 of them.
Yeah, exactly. Well,
they had folks. Man, I'm always the guy who's not the guy, but he knows a couple of the guys.
Yeah. We have decent amount of people there. I think the numbers that I heard were that they were allowing, at least in this first phase, 2,300 people which is about, I don't know, 20% maybe. I don't know what that venue holds on normally. And for basketball, obviously could hold a lot more, but the bleachers.
Right. It's in that 18,000 range, I'm sure.
Yeah, and it would be probably, and it might even be more for basketball, but of course the court is distanced as well, so you don't really have people up near you on the court. So it's an interesting vibe. In truth, all in all, once we got into the second half and I kind of started feeling it a little bit better, and also, really worked in almost 11 months.
That's the other thing too, John.
And Mark, when you do a basketball tournament, you haven't done one in a while.
You haven't done a basketball tournament since in over a year.
Yeah. The last one would be the Orlando Classic, the unattached Orlando Classic,
formerly known as the Avocare, formerly known as the Old Spice.
Old Spice, and I think something else in between as well. So anyway, it was there's plenty of room for improvement.
You shook off a little rust, as apparently the entire arena did, and everyone in it. And I'm sure it was great. And you are your harshest critic. There's no doubt about that. There have been.
Well, I think you have to be, don't you? Though, if you're doing this sort of thing, you really have to be.
You Saturday, you were incredibly balanced when we talked. It was like, I did this. You were very honest about what you had done wrong.
Yeah, but I woke up, Mark. I poured scotch on my Cheerios. That's probably a really, really That's probably as much to do with it as anything.
It's a good sign as to where you are mentally.
I one of the two people I knew in there happened to be Kyle Lowry, and he said that he wished that what you said was the actual truth. He was like, my shot was off, but that PA guy, I mean, if we could go by what he said, I had a hell of a night.
Well, that's just one of those where it's out of your mouth. And I don't even think I got 3-pointer completely out of my mouth before I corrected myself. But it was one of those where I saw him launch the shot. The guy keeping the book was like, because the referee was a little screened. Is it a 3? And I heard yes. And so, anyway, just rookie mistake, though. Shouldn't have done it. Shouldn't have said anything if I didn't know. I know better. But I have to admit, it was just one of those things where, and Mark, I know it's the actors, one of the actors' nightmare is just, I was so sped up. Like my thought process was so much faster than it needed to be at that point. That it was difficult, but all in all, in truth, I will always feel horrible about it. It'll be one of my worst moments.
Sure, of course.
It'll be on my deathbed, 8-10 weeks from now. I probably shouldn't joke about that, frankly. Another negative test, by the way.
You must have a plethora of them under your belt now.
Yeah, I got about 5 so far. I drove down yesterday. I'll back tomorrow. And no, Joe, the scorekeeper did not add the 3 points.
3 points. No, take it off. No.
Let me tell you, it's a good thing we didn't have a coach's challenge because never could get that monitor working.
Right.
That was another thing. Yeah. So
everything.
And again, it's a preseason game.
Yes.
It's a preseason game. And let me just say this: there were several members of the Heat that were really cold from the floor too. So it's not just me. Anyway.
Exactly. So I think we all look forward to again being regaled with further stories of the adventures of John.
Let's hope it's boring from now on.
Well, much like college football, you lost early, so you still have a chance at that public address announcer of the year award.
Although, how about that formula being turned on its head with Notre Dame getting blown out late and still getting into the college football playoff? It's interesting because, and I know this is your show, ostensibly, John, but
no. You had to take ownership of this one, and we're not doing one on Friday, so we just flip flopped. I'll do Wednesday.
We're not doing well. Of course, we're not doing one on Friday because it's Christmas Day. So, all right, well, you'll do one on Wednesday. But there was an article out there before the vote happened at noon or whatever it was yesterday for the playoff, and according to FPI, according to Strength of Schedule, I mean, Notre Dame was ahead of Texas A&M, which is what I thought the battle was going to be. Not by much, even with that loss, not by much. But FPI, they're 14 and A&M is 15 or something like that. Strength of schedule, they're about 3 and A&M was about 4. Yeah. I mean, it was very, very close.
Just thought, to your point, though, Mark, I just thought A&M lose early to Alabama. It wasn't as if they dropped a game to, in the Big Ten, we looked at, people were saying, well, if Northwestern beats Ohio State, well, they lost to Michigan State. I mean, there were some things, but they lost to Alabama. Texas A&M did what you would argue a Southeastern Conference school team would have to do to get in, not playing in the championship game. So I was surprised. The more and more you think about it, it was really, really difficult to figure this year out because of the lack of games played. I mean, I still think it's valid for people who don't believe Ohio State should have gotten a shot because of the number of games that they played. I don't know where I fall on it. I just think it's funny that after all of the discussion and this great day of college football, which I enjoyed from what I remember immensely, it's 2020. It's chalk. It's the 4 teams that we've been talking about for
the entire
5 weeks now, 6 weeks now, really kind of solidified over the last 5 or 6 weeks. The only discussion has been how badly does Notre Dame have to lose to would they have to lose to Clemson, or how if the game was tight enough, would Clemson stay in? Well, what we found out was Notre Dame can largely get blown out. And I think they had a subpar performance. I also believe that Clemson, I think probably was a little bit more motivated. I think Dabo Swinney gets a lot of credit for that, for motivating that Clemson team. I think they wanted to prove that it was a bit of an anomaly losing to Notre Dame. But it's no matter how many teams we have in these playoffs, year in and year out, there's going to be controversy. It's just never going to make anybody happy. Even your 16 team playoff mark, 17, 18, and 19 are going to be bitching and moaning about it.
Yeah, it's interesting because Florida would be would be outside looking in in an 18 playoff. It would be Texas A&M. It would be Cincinnati. I think Indiana gets there as well, and then Oklahoma, I think, round out the top 8, which would be interesting. And to your point last Friday that you made over and over again, because I was oddly insistent, I was a little combative on Friday in an arena that I shouldn't be combative about. College football is not where I'm going to win many arguments, because you and Jeff are both much more steeped in that. But to your point, you've got Cincinnati. You would have, I think it would, Oklahoma would play Alabama. That'd be a decent first round game. Cincinnati would play Clemson.
Exposed.
Indiana would play Notre Dame. That'd be kind of fun.
That's a real boy. Talk about a game that is with all that interest, the state of Indiana matchup, and that Indiana team, which you can't give them enough credit. They lost their starting quarterback, Penix, who was quite good and seemed to be kind of the straw that stirred the drink for them. And to their credit, they just kept moving on. That's a great story. That would be a fun matchup, no doubt about it.
And A&M Ohio State would be a fun matchup,
which is great.
And Oklahoma Alabama would be a fun matchup. So 3 out of 4, and then of course Cincinnati plays Clemson, and it's a unique, interesting matchup because of Cincinnati being in there. There's a lot of articles out there today, John, talking about what we've been talking about, which is that this is not good for college football. These four teams, the 4-team playoff, and more specifically these 4 teams making it in after weeks and weeks. I would think it's even more than 5 weeks, frankly, of. Nothing is different. Nothing is.
Well, I'm just thinking
there's zero drama.
I was saying that since it's been about 5 or 6 weeks since Notre Dame beat Clemson. I was thinking that, that started like the discussion then about, wow, because no one really let's be honest, no one expected Notre Dame as we knew they were better. We didn't think they'd beat Clemson in that game, even without Trevor Lawrence, frankly. Most people didn't. So that's when the discussion really ramped up about, okay, we do it every year. These are the most likely candidates, and generally that ends up being who it is, but we're always trying to find reasons to keep them out. I do think an argument could have been made for Texas A&M. I think they have a legitimate beef. Because, again, I think a Southeastern Conference school that only lost to an undefeated Alabama team, and I believe that game was in Tuscaloosa as well, and I know that doesn't mean quite as much now. I think they do have a legitimate beef. But I'm also not 100% sure that the 4 best teams in college football aren't the ones in the playoff. However, I will say this about Oklahoma. They've been playing as well over the last month of any team in college football. They would be a worthy contender, and I think they get Florida. They get Florida in the Cotton Bowl. It's going to be, I believe. So
Florida in the Cotton Bowl. That's a lot. That's a great game. That's
it is
a terrific game.
Florida is who we thought they were, though. I will say they gave Alabama a bit of a scare once that offense just got into shootout mode. But Florida's defense I just don't think that's a championship caliber defense, frankly.
Yeah, you're right. About 6 weeks, I guess, right? 6 weeks since they played each other, Notre Dame and Clemson. So I was like the first week in November, something like that. And the discussion through all of that weeks,
it's Notre Dame and Clemson. What happens there in the rematch, and then can Ohio State get in only having played 5 games is really it. And outside of that, there really wasn't a lot of discussion. Nobody expected Alabama to drop out of the, and let me tell you, Florida had beaten Alabama by a point in that game. Had they come back, last one with the football, that shootout, I still think Alabama gets in, to be honest.
Oh yeah, they would have gotten in. There's no doubt about it. If they would have lost that game, there's no doubt about it. I mean, Notre Dame loses, gets blown out, and they're in. Alabama would have easily been. Alabama was in regardless. That was a great game. That was a terrific game.
Really was. It looked like it could have been a blowout for a while, too. It looked like Alabama was going to run away with that game. But I have to give the Gators credit. I mean, the defense really never did step up. They gave up 52 points. But, there's a lot of fight in them. But they need to button up defensively a bit because they have talent. But they're very undisciplined. And, boy, they were out of position a lot.
It surprised me the running yards they gave up. I've seen them this year, and they were always susceptible on the back end, I felt. Their defense.
Big plays, definitely.
But I didn't think they'd give up 200 plus yards to the running back. They did. I think what were there maybe 2 to 3 drives that Alabama did not score a touchdown. Yeah. Maybe 2 or 3.
Yeah,
and that gave Florida enough room to come back, and that was a lot of fun. I mean, it really was a fun football game to watch. And I'm pleased with college football as well for moving the Rose Bowl. I think that's a good move. To Dallas. I think that's great. What's the point? And listen, if California wants to do what California does because their public health officials believe that's in the best interest of the public health, then fine, that's fine. But then there are consequences to that, and one of them is you don't get the Rose Bowl,
right?
And I think that's an appropriate decision. Frankly.
Yeah, I don't have a problem with it either. I don't really have a problem with California people. People,
if that's
locally have to do what they feel is right for them. This is a difficult situation, but I agree with you. I'm glad that they've moved that. I'm glad that they moved that game. I will miss the Rose Bowl as a venue because I think it's just it's such a nostalgic venue to watch any football game in. It is granddaddy. But I don't think there was any choice. I want to jump back and just say, you can't say enough about Najee Harris, though, for Alabama.
Seriously,
he is a beast. Anybody who gets him is, I think, going to be very, very happy. He's been overshadowed by Mac Jones, but honestly, he made the better Heisman argument if you're just limiting it to a game.
Oh,
if all things being equal, and that was the stage, he deserves a lot of credit.
And I'm not sure if and when they've made the invites yet. But if it does come to Harris, down to Harris, Trask, Jones, and Lawrence, all 4 of them had stellar games.
Yeah.
When all of the nation's eyes were, our lonely eyes were gazed upon them.
Yeah, they really did. They stepped up. Big time players. It was great to see.
Fun to see big time players on the biggest stage, at the biggest stakes. All 4 of those guys having monster games. That was really fun to see.
Notre Dame, Lenny saying opening up as 19-point dogs early. We'll see. Notre Dame's one of those teams that I just think there's a love for them throughout the country that I bet that the number comes down because the betting's going to get.
I don't know if you saw that game, John. You probably did, but they had a chance early. They made some bad mistakes early where they could have gotten some serious momentum going on Clemson. They missed a 24-yard field goal that should have been a touchdown, frankly, that they had. They could have been up, I think, 2 scores, 14-0. And that could have, someone says, oh, it was just 7 more points added. That's not how.
No.
Routes don't work that way.
Right.
Routes work because you've got momentum. You're doing it's like the, I don't know if you remember this, but of course it always comes down to a 49er example. But the year Jim Burt knocked out Joe Montana and he knocked him out on a play where he threw a pick 6 to Lawrence Taylor. and they lost 46-3, 49-3, something along those lines in the Meadowlands. It was a miserable game. It was 86. They went on to win the Super Bowl, the Giants. But early in that game, they found Jerry Rice wide open. And he was running in for a touchdown, and he just dropped the ball. The ball just came out of his grasp, and it became a touchback. And they would have been up 7-0. And then people said, okay, it would have been 49-10. But that's not the case.
No, that's not how it works. Right.
It's an emotional game. It's a game of momentum. And if they would have capitalized on that early success that they had, it would have been a different game, I think. And
well, it also changes. It changes what everybody has to do when you start to get down. I mean, your offense then is less. You have fewer plays that you can choose from because you've got to score more quickly. And against a team like Clemson, against a team like Alabama, particularly, you can't have empty possessions. And that's what happened to Notre Dame a few times. And I think Clemson probably, let's be honest, talent-wise, Clemson is better than Notre Dame. They have more blue chip talent than Notre Dame. It's academic standards, and Clemson is a fine school, but academic standards at Notre Dame are a little higher. I think playing up north limits them a little. One of the places I agree with Colin Cowherd about the northern schools. I think that makes things a little bit more difficult. Now, Notre Dame also benefits, though, from having its own television network, so it may even out a bit, but I think we would both agree that Clemson is a deeper and more talented team. And when you play deeper and more talented teams, you can't leave points on the field. They can. The old adage about they don't have to play a perfect game, you do. I don't think Notre Dame had to play a perfect game, but I think they picked a bad week to have one of their poorer performances, frankly.
And maybe they get this out of their system. Who knows?
Could be.
I don't know about that. I remember a few years back when they were 10-0 and played the Miami Hurricanes and got destroyed by the Hurricanes. They didn't win another game the rest of the season. So they could go into a shell. That was Brian Kelly as well. So we'll see what happens there. I want to congratulate you. You were 2-0 in locks and shocks yesterday. Your Washington football team had a game effort against the Seahawks, but they lost. And then your that was your shock because Washington was favored. No. Was Washington favored in that game?
No, my shock was the Cowboys.
The shock. That's right. And that was no surprise to me as well either because the 49ers are a mess. And it's
but look at no, wait a second. I don't want you to get down to what I was impressed with was the 49ers looked like they could have rolled over in that game and really just been boat raced. And it ended up not really being a boat race in that game. I mean, their game, they play hard week in and week out. They're struggling obviously at the quarterback position. There's a lot of discussion now as to who the starting quarterback is going to be for them next year. Garoppolo, I guess, is now on the shelf for the rest of the season. But they were game. They played hard. It's just, it just wasn't that year. And if you're going to pick a year for it to not be that year, the COVID year is probably not a bad one. And you're the defending NFC champion. You lost the Super Bowl. It's not uncommon for there to be a hangover. But they played hard. I would like to say with their loss yesterday, the Washington football team maintained their position at first place in the NFC.
They certainly did.
Thanks to Cleveland.
Although the hard-charging Cowboys, although you don't have to worry about the Cowboys, you've beaten them twice. You have to worry about the Giants, and there's 2 games left. And if they tie you, then they're the division champs.
Yeah.
But there will not be a above 500 playoff member from the NFC East.
Nope.
But that's okay. Hopefully it's 7-9 or even 8-8. Who knows?
No, and I think we saw from that Washington defense yesterday against Seattle. They're going to be tough out for anybody. If they get a home playoff game, that defense will keep it close. Haskins hadn't played in a while. He looked really shaky early, or he hadn't started. Obviously, he'd gotten a little bit of playtime. But he actually kind of redeemed himself a little bit in the end. Everybody's talking about the fact that he played, and he has conducted himself since the initial issues there when he was benched, and there was some discussion about how he didn't feel good about it. He has actually carried himself pretty well. I'm proud of Dwayne Haskins. I think he's growing up a little bit.
No, I liked that as well. I liked his performance. I think it's interesting. Seattle's pretty smart. Russell Wilson's very smart. And I think, getting that cadence, really trying to confuse because they're so aggressive on that line and they could get so many offsides. I think there was quite a few of those in the first half, right? With Washington, they're just so anxious to rush the quarterback. And if you've got this savvy guy on the other side under center, he can probably take advantage of that a little bit going forward into the playoffs. My lock was Miami, and at first it looked, a little shaky because but they took care of business pretty easily, and they're 9-5 right now, which is way ahead of schedule. If you ask me, at least a year, I would say 2. And Baltimore, for some reason, Baltimore has the tiebreaker against them. I don't think they played this year. They've lost the same amount of conference games. So I'm not sure. Their division records are pretty similar. I'm not sure why they have that because they're 9-5 as well.
I believe it's average uniform size. I believe it's down to now the average uniform size. The team with the smaller players actually gets a little bit of a bump because the assumption is that they've worked harder because they're smaller and not as physical. So I think that's what it's come down to.
So we'll see what happens. There's 2 games left, and those are they have the Raiders, and then they have a last tough game as well. That's going to be tough. Is that Buffalo? They play Buffalo again? Probably.
Yeah.
So it might be tough, but I would love to see the Dolphins in the playoffs because
I think you're going to see them in the playoffs, frankly.
Well, Baltimore has to stub their toe somewhere along the line. And because right now they're on the outside looking in. unfortunately. But yes, they've got a defense that's like Washington's. They can really make a difference defensively and offensively. I think Tua puts them over the top. They need weapons, obviously, offensively, but he can put them over the top. He really can, single-handedly.
Now, according to my, I just want to stop you there because I'm a little confused. Because according to my NFL playoff standings right now, Miami's in the 7, Baltimore's in the 8.
Really?
Yeah. They're both 9 and 5.
Right.
So you have Kansas City, Pittsburgh, and Buffalo have already clinched. 2 of them have clinched the division, Kansas City and Buffalo. Tennessee, Cleveland, Indianapolis at 6, Miami at 7, and Baltimore at 8.
I see that. Miami's at 7 right now. You're absolutely right.
Yeah. So I think you're going to see them in the playoffs, and I agree. They are at least a year, probably 2 ahead of time. And the second generation of Belichick disciples has proven to be better than the first generation of Belichick disciples.
Yeah, and I don't know. You could argue this is 3rd or 4th generation.
Maybe.
Belichick disciples. I mean, Matt Patricia, I don't think is 1st generation.
I guess he's. I considered him actually with these guys in the 2nd generation. He's kind of like the first guy, the 2nd generation, and he's certainly not. But if you look back at the Romeo Crennels of the world and the Charlie Weisses, Romeo Crennel had a little bit of success, but then that fell off. Charlie Weiss didn't have a great deal of success. But these guys are the new group is doing pretty well, and Brian Flores particularly probably won't get a sniff for Coach of the Year, but he certainly should.
Yeah, I mean, who's getting Coach of the Year?
I think
Ron Rivera.
Well, in the NFC, I think you have a couple of guys. I think Ron Rivera is definitely in the mix. I think in the AFC, if we're sticking with Miami for a minute, Kevin Stefanski in Cleveland deserves a lot of credit because I think even though they were a sexy pick, I don't think anybody expected that they would turn into kind of a favorite week in and week out, which they're becoming. Also, Mike Vrabel deserves a lot of respect. They're better than they were last year. They're better than they were.
Speaking of better than they were, this is what I don't like about Coach of the Year is that, to me, the best Coach of the Year is Andy Reid. They're 13-1. He's the Coach of the Year, but
he won't get credit. He's defending Super Bowl champion.
You get
he's met expectations, Mark. He's met expectations, and that is the worst. He's met the expectations.
They won 12 games last year. He's already won more than his Super Bowl winning team.
All right, hold on.
It must be said. Are you answering Steve Carricker?
Yeah, my best friend growing up, Steve Carricker, former University of Virginia 4-year starter on the offensive line, fine football player. He's now upset at me because I said that Clemson was a good school. It is not Virginia, the university. It is not as good as that. I mentioned that it wasn't as good as Notre Dame, Steve. But it is, for a big school like that, it's a pretty good school academically.
I think so. I think it is. It's considered a pretty decent school.
They're very covetous. They're very covetous at UVA. Very covetous of.
I would say Notre Dame's a better school than UVA academically, although UVA is right up.
No
there.
chance. No chance.
Yeah,
Notre Dame. It's all smoke and mirrors at Notre Dame.
No, I don't think so.
They don't even have to go to class.
that's
that's all classes. Say 4 Hail Marys, 1
Our Father,
and there's your economics A. That's all it is.
I just have to say 5 prayers. That's it.
So
it depends on the class.
But you, John, if you were at Notre Dame and that's all that you had to do to pass a class or to get an A in a class or to get an A on a test, you'd probably still not even do that.
I'd do it, but I'd have my fingers crossed.
So I think Andy Reid does have to accept the fact that you don't necessarily get credit when you're coaching Patrick Mahomes, Tyreek Hill, and Travis Kelce. That does take away from your credibility a tad.
Yeah, I mean, I think there is. Unfortunately, I think there is.
Why it would. I don't know why it would.
I just think it's part and parcel of a lot of times Coach of the Year equates to the guy that they think did the most with the least.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah,
I
think that's a legitimate way to look at coaching.
Yeah, I mean, I think you can, because I think you could look at, and this is a great argument, actually, and I think it's a great discussion. MVPs, they're always, MVP is not necessarily the MVP. It's generally the quarterback on a team that's having a great deal of success. Your MVP could definitely be, the left tackle for someone. The offensive line for the Cleveland Browns right now get a lot of love. Baker Mayfield, good Lord. I think he filmed a commercial at one point during a drop back and then was able to get rid of the ball. But we talked.
That credibility or the criteria. I mean, you're right. That's a good criteria to view coaching. But I think it's also a very good criteria to view coaching when you have success and you can maintain success. Many people would argue that's harder than going from zero to success, and then keeping success is a harder coaching job. And that's just not part of the criteria in coaching.
I think that with Kansas City, they should win front office of the year for years to come.
Yeah, they've done a terrific job. There's no doubt about it. And that's another reason, though, Jeff, while Andy Reid won't get as much credit as he deserves, because they go, well, the front office put together a great team, and he had, he found a generational talent in Patrick Mahomes. But to your point, Mark, in Jason Garrett's hands, they're a 7-9 team.
Well, I agree wholeheartedly. I don't know if they're 7-9, but
5-11.
Yeah, exactly. The kind
4-12.
Exactly. They are Tyreek Hill, Patrick Mahomes, and Travis Kelce, in large part because of Andy Reid. I mean, that's the truth.
It's hard. It's a chicken or egg thing with coaching.
It's Shaquille and Kobe winning 3 championships with Phil Jackson and not winning anything with Del Harris. And
I think the thing is, though, Mark, is, if you're looking at to really get a measure of coaching, you have to look at multiple seasons, I believe. Like, we come down on Jason Garrett, and I think actually Jason Garrett is a good offensive coordinator. I don't think he was a great coach. I think he might have been better in a different situation. I think his closeness to Jerry Jones and his closeness to that organization probably hurt him in the end. But we realized after several seasons, 3 or 4 seasons, that the Cowboys were squandering talent because of the coaching. I mean, I think not just us, but people who know a great deal more than we did looked at them and said, they're not getting the most out of their talent. So if that is a criteria for letting a guy go or saying he's not a good coach, then for the MVP or coach of the year, I think you can look at who's getting the most out of the talent they have. And that's why I'll throw a guy like Stefanski. I think Ron Rivera, I mean, there's a great story behind that too. He may get a little bit of a nod because he's overcoming cancer, and that really has to be brought into play as well. These are fallible. These awards are fallible across the board because we never really know 100% what the criteria is.
Well, but we do know what the criteria is with this, and it's getting the most out of your talent if you weren't expected to do well.
Right.
It's not getting the most out of your talent if you've already done well.
Right.
They're all human beings.
But Mark, what do we always say? Manage expectations. It's why I don't like Lou Holtz, but I do appreciate the fact that when Lou Holtz's undefeated Notre Dame team was playing like an 0-9 Purdue, that Lou would go out and say, I don't see any way we can win this one. There's no chance. They just too much talent. I mean, manage expectations. If you are expected to win and you do, you ain't getting a lot of you're not getting a lot of awards. You could argue that Tom Brady probably deserved 2 or 3 more MVP awards because there were times when he essentially took that team on his back.
No, I agree with that. And I think, Bill Walsh and Joe Gibbs, I think they all deserved more coach of the years than they got, kind of thing.
Yeah, but they didn't because of the success.
Because I just think that that's an important part of coaching as well. It's to me, it's harder to maintain than it is to get there. And I just think that should be factored in. That's all. But it never is. And we know this. So there's really no point in talking about it anymore because we know how it's going to go. It's going to be a coach from a team that was expected to do poorly and hasn't and has done well.
Listen, I know we're running long because of the terrific interview you had with Michael Crawford. I'm so sorry I missed that. My goodness, the umbrella of businesses that they have underneath them with these. I love the staking. You know me, I'm not a fantasy sports guy, but the staking thing with the franchises is a lot of fun. They've got a lot of great stuff going on.
Great. Love that idea.
Just terrific, just terrific. But I do want to bring up the fact that if you're Trevor Lawrence right now, the thing you have to keep in mind is that generational money will buy you a much, much more palatial place in Jacksonville than it was going to in Manhattan.
Well,
you got a 1,200 square foot apartment on the Upper West Side in Manhattan, and you're going to have 46 acres in Jacksonville.
And no state taxes to worry about either.
Yes. So very good for him. Can you believe the Jets? I mean, if you're a Jets fan,
I can't believe it.
You have to be, and the Rams.
No, if I was a Rams fan, what are you doing, Los Angeles Rams? You look like world beaters 1 week, maybe 2 weeks. You beat Seattle, you beat Arizona.
They're not consistent. They're not consistent.
You knock out Tampa. You lose twice to the 49ers. You lose to the Dolphins, when they still were figuring out their identity. And you lose the only win the New York Jets have. That's just, and I think it was in Los Angeles. It was in Los Angeles.
It was, which is where, and people are saying they're a different team. Jared Goff is a different, but that to me is, Adam Gase will be hung in effigy more for that win than he was for any single loss that they had. It was unbelievable. I could not believe it when I saw it. I simply couldn't believe it.
It might work in the Rams' favor. If they don't play well at home, well, they got what they want. They're not going to have a home playoff game now. Seattle win the division, be able to host a playoff game. And the Rams won't have to, and that probably serves them well, actually, tell you the truth. But boy, oh boy, that's a funky team, the Rams.
And now Jacksonville, the Gardner Minshew, who basically, if you look at Gardner Minshew's statistics and everything, he has not played badly at all. I mean, he is inconsistent because he's a young quarterback, but he's going to have some worth somewhere. But I really, really think Joe Conley saying Kyle Trask would put butts in the seats. Yeah, they've tried that before. They tried that with Blake Bortles, I think, and it didn't work very well. They're going to take Trevor Lawrence. My harping notwithstanding. Can we jump to Ohio State for a minute, though?
Sure.
I think there could be an argument that Texas A&M is better than them. Justin Fields did not play a great game.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
What is the over/under that you guys would put that Jimbo Fisher is going to have a comment if Ohio State gets run by Clemson?
Oh, I do take the over. Multiple comments.
Yes.
Multiple comments.
He's going to be talking until next college football season about this. He is fired up.
I think I think it's legit, and I think it goes back to what the three of us have been saying is this was the 1 year that they could have expanded the playoff and said this is a 1 year thing because of what's going on. We think we don't want to punish the Big Ten schools that came back late like Ohio State and ran the table. I get that, all of that. But I think they missed their chance, and I think Jimbo has every right to bitch and moan. I
agree. It's all about number of games played. Now, and that's what's ironic is that Texas A&M had 3 games canceled as well.
Yeah,
they had 3 games canceled.
The one feather I put in Ohio State's cap is that they were dead set against the Big Ten not playing games from the beginning. They were outspoken about it, and I think they played a major role in them actually getting in games this season. So that's the one.
Oh yeah, there's no doubt about that. There's no doubt about Ohio State, Michigan. There were schools that were pushing for that.
Their numbers are better than, but the argument is number of games. I think Texas A&M ended up playing 9, right? And Ohio State played 6. Their numbers, their FBI is better. Their SOS is better as well. Again, not by much, but yes, I think it's a strong argument. When you play a third less games, you're going to have a third less opportunity to stub your toe.
Yeah.
And Ohio State has shown us that they're not necessarily a juggernaut.
Yeah, it's not the juggernaut Ohio State team. Now, that was people were introduced to talk about a very well-coached football team. That Northwestern team is really well-coached. They've got talent on defense. They played a little bit above their heads on offense for a while. Eventually, they got worn down. But Indiana obviously gave Ohio State everything that they could handle. Yeah, they are not a juggernaut, and should they lose, and I think that's certainly a possibility, then Jimbo Fisher, I think, has a legitimate gripe. And if Cincinnati goes on and wins their bowl game big,
they're gonna lose to Clemson.
What's that?
Yeah, but if it's 24-20, then I think Jimbo Fisher just has to eat it. But if it's 48-10. then Jimbo Fisher says we would have done better.
I think it's more realistic they lose close. I mean, I think Ohio State. It seems to me, Johnny, that they're more of a team that sort of plays up to the level of their competition.
Yeah, and I think that they suffered from the lack of practice time, and they as much as anyone. I mean, I just don't. They're generally a pretty well-oiled machine, and we've seen that they weren't. They've had less practice than Texas A&M. I mean, there are any number of reasons where you could look at it and say, well, here are the reasons that they've been inconsistent. They don't seem like a juggernaut. They could have built up steam. We see these great teams first couple of weeks. Alabama always does it to us within the first couple of weeks of the season. They'll be down 14-3 to Ole Miss at the half, and then they'll end up winning the game, 55-17. Those kind of help tune up the team toward. I think that they still have not hit their stride. Scary thing about that is they could hit their stride into the playoff, because I wouldn't be surprised if they upset anybody, frankly.
Yeah. Although I don't know. I think Alabama, I don't think anyone's going to touch Alabama this year, personally. That's just how it looks to me. You guys gave them a great game.
I think Clemson could beat them. I think Lawrence could beat them.
Possibly. I don't know how much better Lawrence is than Trask, to tell you the truth.
Well, I think he presents some a couple of other problems for them. He's a little more athletic than Trask, certainly. You don't really have that with them. He's had more consistent success at Clemson with the players around him. So I think there's a better recognition. I think they're a better offensive team, a more consistently good offensive team,
better defensive team.
But what you did see was that Alabama can be. You can score points on Alabama. There's no doubt about this.
You can.
That's not as good an Alabama defense, to the point we made about Ohio State, as some of the Alabama defenses in the past.
All right. Before we go, talk about tonight's game, Pittsburgh and Cincinnati. Evidently, they're at Cincinnati. They are when they are favored by more than 8 points. This is from the Lenny Vault. This is from the Lenny Pittsburgh Tomlin Vault.
Count on it.
Wisdom information. They're 4-18, if I'm not mistaken, Lenny. 4-18 against the spread when they're favored by 8 or more on the road under Tomlin. 4-18. And they also do not perform well in the second game against Cincinnati in the Tomlin era. Mm-hmm. So this is something that Lenny is probably going to take Cincy, and the point.
Hey guys, I got to go. I'm calling my bookie.
Can I? Well, I want to touch on before we go, and I know we're running over, but I love that Pittsburgh's getting nailed for that. You can. Oh, they're 4. What about the wise guys? Are you overvaluing Pittsburgh? Is that? Why don't they? I know why they don't get anything, because we don't want to end up like Billy Bats in the trunk of a car. I get it, but I'm just saying, why? Well, maybe you should stop favoring them by that much on the road. Maybe that's where they are.
Well, I think part of that is that those wise guys are probably making tons of money on a 4.
Yeah, they're not losing.
Spread. Yeah, so they set the line, and then the betting adjusts the line,
right?
And they collect regardless, seemingly. Georgia Cincy, that's a pretty fun bowl. That's a Peach Bowl. See, I'm all for the Peach Bowl. Steve Carricker, I'm all for the Peach Bowl.
Former Peach Bowl champion, Steve Carricker.
I was always for the Peach Bowl, by the way, and I'm for all the bowls. I'm for all 18 that are left.
Well, and to that, let me just say, Army got robbed. Army should be playing. They're 9-2, and they did not get a bowl game. And 3-7, Tennessee got a bowl game. And I get it, because a lot of that has to do with follow the money, that they have deals with specific conferences. But I got into it a little with our old friend Howie Schwab on Twitter last night. Yeah, he said it's a disgrace that 3-7 Tennessee is in a bowl game. And I said in a normal year I would agree with you, but a lot of teams are dropping out. They have a conference tie-in, which is really kind of ties the hands of the bowl. And for these communities, Tennessee, if they travel better than a team with a better record, then I sort of get why they're doing it. Again, I don't think you can take this year and look at all these bowl games and put a lot of importance on it. I think they're just trying to get interesting matchups to get some eyes on the television.
Well, Cincy, Georgia, the Peach Bowl, that's a terrific.
It's a good game.
That's a great game. What's the bowl that Tennessee's in?
I didn't even look. I got to be honest with you. I didn't even look.
I abandoned my position too early, because if there was a year that I would have massive credibility and could look at you both in the eye and say, really, if you're a 3-7 Tennessee team, you're going to be proud of going to a bowl game.
But our argument would be it's an altogether different year. So it's not like a 3-7 Tennessee team going in a normal year where everybody plays the same amount and all the bowl games are populated. And it wouldn't happen because we have teams that are opting out because of COVID. So it's a special situation.
But the fact that
they're in the Liberty Bowl.
Liberty Bowl. You like that one?
That's a big, that was one that existed when I was in college. So I think I used to give it credit. The Liberty Bowl, that's the bowl that I think, if I'm not mistaken, Trudy's uncle, who coached the University of Miami, brought the Hurricanes there in 1966. I think it was their first bowl win in the history of that program.
There you go. How about that?
Interesting. All right, and Army 9-2. That's sad. See, that to me exposes the fraud that is the bowl system.
Well, again, you've got to though. Let's take this year with a grain of salt.
But they're 9-2 and 3-7.
Right, but the bowls that were open for that needed a team, they had conference tie-ins, and that's money that the tentacles of that money goes much further than a single game matchup.
Right. It has nothing to do with the student athletes.
Right. Steve Carricker, former Peach Bowl champion. I guess you're always a Peach Bowl champion, Steve. I can't call you former. You will always be a Peach Bowl champion. Bowl games are all about money, and of course they are. But as we said, they're also about some great experiences for the athletes. I guess the argument is, the Tennessee guys are like, man, we mustered 3 wins. We deserve, I would respect them if they went and said, we don't want to play. I get that. But I also understand the bowls because, and Jeff brought it up. He knows, he works these sort of things. There's a lot of ancillary money that come into any community.
Yeah. And
where
these money. The bigger schools, the huge schools, the schools that are already rich, the SEC schools are getting the money by sending a 3-7 team, and
they travel better.
Army isn't. Yeah, exactly. That's because that's why any big corporation will destroy any small business, because
now maybe there's this, Mark.
Get more, and if that's how we agree that how this country should run,
this is my last point in this entire show.
Big business.
I think Army was shut out for a reason. I think people feared that with what's going on, that if a bunch of Army people showed up in their town, might be a re-election.
Martial law.
Might be martial law. They're afraid there'd be martial law.
And it all started at the Liberty Bowl.
It's perfect. There it is.
Cadets travel. Do not let the cadets travel.
Oh man, yeah. But I feel Jeff Monken and that Army team 9-2. They deserve an awful lot of credit because they've had a great season. And they're searching for a game. Actually, they may be able to put together a game with somebody to play. That's the last thing that I read about it. And I hope they get a game because the Black Knights deserve it. Certainly.
Yeah, 9-2. It just exposes the fraud. That's all I'm saying, and and it exposes the inequity of it. It's truly unequal. It's the big boys always win.
Yeah,
the big boys always win, and not even Army. Not only is it a fraud, but it's an unpatriotic fraud. The NCAA. I'm going with that.
There's like trucks coming down I think this may be monitored by the Department of Defense. We might have to go.
The John Pelkey Bowl is hosting Army today.
I think so. Yeah, I think they're coming here to play my backyard.
A little flag football in the backyard.
Absolutely. All right. The next time I see you, it'll be Wednesday. We may have to do the show a little bit earlier, depending on what time. I think they'll probably want to get me there about 8 a.m. to make sure that I got my proverbial together. But it'll be the opening night against the Pelicans. And did you see this? The 2 teams in the running for the James Harden Memorial bring in a great player who'll never get you a championship are apparently the Boston Celtics and the Toronto Raptors. Talk of the Raptors, top of the Raptors trading Pascal Siakam. What's that?
Changes daily. I think that's the latest of what Houston is wanting to do, not what James Harden wants to do, right? James Harden.
Yeah, I'll tell you this much: if they trade Pascal Siakam for the Houston Rockets, for James Harden, the Houston Rockets are more likely to win a championship than the Toronto Raptors.
Certainly possible. Certainly a possibility.
All right. Well, I guess this was my show after all, so I'll wrap it up. We'll see you Wednesday. I like these 10 o'clock start times. I don't know about you guys, but I kind of like this 10 o'clock start time business.
I don't mind.
So maybe we do that again on Wednesday, but we'll let everyone know. Probably we won't let them know. You'll just get an alert on your phone, and that's how you'll know, because
I'll barely know.
Yeah.
I'll be lucky to know.
But for Michael Crawford, that was a great interview. I was very happy to have him in. We want to thank him once again for joining after further review. For Jeff Taylor, our producer, for John Pelkey, who joined us post interview. I'm Mark. This was a great time. Stay safe, everyone. We'll talk to you on Wednesday.